I know some of us feel like we don't have options, but if it's you that we're talking to today, think about the options that you have in taking care of self. What does self-care look like? And I think that too is so important when you're just trying to do the everyday thing, whatever that is for you. If it's in your household, if it's work, whatever space that you go, what does self-care look like just for you? Hi, everybody. It's Kim Ewing, and welcome back to Kim's Coffee House. I'm so excited because May is a special month because it's Mental Health Awareness and it's Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And that's why the National Empowerment Center is hosting a special 3-series of episodes focused on the Black community and also on the Asian American and Pacific Islander and Latino communities, discussing how each one's culture impacts their mental health and how we can become better allies. So I want to introduce two amazing colleagues and friends. One is Juan Velez-Court, and the other is Joanna Archangel. And each is going to be talking about their community and how mental health affects their community and their culture and themselves personally. So welcome.
We're super happy to be here, and I think it's a beautiful opportunity to just really connect on every community can be individual, but what connects us is we want to be accepted, right? We want to be recognized. We want to be validated. And I think even before we hit the record button, we've been talking about just that makes us different, in many ways connects us, right?
Absolutely. Juan, very much so. And Joanna?
Thank you. Yeah, I echo what Juan was saying, and thank you, Kim, for the warm welcome. Maybe not everyone is aware, Juan and I are new consultants of NEC, and, having this team to welcome you and also value your voice with all of your identities, our identities, especially where they intersect, and, be an amazing space to be able to talk about, issues that are important, not just to us, but to our communities. And of course, as it relates to mental health. So thank you for being here with us. And I'm just really excited to talk with you all about it.
And I'm just glad we have this platform. And I'm excited about who it's going to touch and what we're going to learn from each other as we spend some time together.
And I love that last part that you mentioned, because thanks to some of the work that we've been doing in the short amount of time that I've known both of you, you really do learn a lot, because you can become the expert of your community because they're your neighbors, right? It's like, this is where I am, but then you hear AAPI and it's like, what connects us? What makes us different? What is unique about how we celebrate and perceive mental health? And you get a really good sense of an appreciation of just how much things have changed, because would the three of us maybe even be talking together 20 years ago or something? Probably not. So that shows you just the power of like social media and acceptance and everything. And something that I would love to openly ask you, Kim, first is like, what does mental health mean to you and the Black community and all the progress that has been made across so many years?
Well, when I think about mental health, I think about it very personal. I think about how my mother was my shero, really being aware of her own mental health and the struggles that she had as a young lady. It was definitely not something that we talked about in our family. Our family, we really guarded what one went through and how one might have felt. And so I just remember my mother being told when she was really discovering that she wasn't okay, that they wanted to know why she was going to go see somebody. And this came from her mother and her mother-in-law. And they were very upset. and they told her, you come talk to us. Whatever your problem is, we got you. You just need to don't go outside to talk to anybody else. And I remember my mother struggling with that because it was those people that she needed to talk about. and it was, it wasn't working because that means that I can't talk about what's going on because it's really coming from inside the family, along with the generational trauma. So I just remember her being a trailblazer in breaking that code and going outside of the family to get help and to speak to someone that she wasn't okay. And I just remember being very aware of that as a little kid. Not still knowing everything that was going on, but just knowing that, man, she's doing something opposite of what they want. And I was very intrigued by that. So I see our community that it's grown so much since then, and it was viewed as you tell somebody in your family, usually it's the matriarch, or if it's a guy, maybe they go to the barbershop, and that it was in those kind of circles, or you go to your pastor if you belong to a church, or your priest if you belong to a Catholic church, right? And besides that, that's kind of how it's supposed to be. So it's interesting now that many Black people that I know feel comfortable to say that they have someone that they can go talk to, that they have a counselor, that they actually, depending on what it is that they may need, they have outside resources. If it's talking to someone, if it's yoga, if it's depending on what they're dealing with, if they're taking a certain medication, whatever it is that's good for them, they realize their options. They're not ashamed to talk about their options, and they have literally have carved out their own plan for healing and being better, whatever that looks like for them. So that I love.
I love that you're talking about, whatever works for that individual, being definitely person-centered. And thanks so much, Kim, for sharing about your mother and your Shiro. And, it sounds like it really impacted you. And do you think that correlates with the way you're now doing implicit bias training and, emotional CPR for the BIPOC community? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's a really good question, Joanna. Thank you for asking that. And absolutely. When I think about implicit bias, I think about people of color. I think about generational trauma. I think about how that generational trauma has impacted directly the Black community through enforced slavery. And in addition to that, to just their humanity being ripped away, of not even knowing who they are. I think about what that led them to that what that looked like with just not being a human, right? Not even being treated in fashion, being ripped away from their families and their friends. And well, we know, right? It's just a horrible, horrible, dark history. For me, it has been my personal journey to teach and to train about implicit bias and how it affects us all, not just people of color, but everybody. And then with emotional CPR, actually the same way, because how people are supported. And people of color do get looked over quite often in these conversations. And then women of color are really at the bottom of the totem pole. And so it's just very hard to imagine so many people still suffering from this. and being a person who is um, not just a person, a Black woman, but I am very diverse in many backgrounds in ethnic groups. It just affects so many people. So mental health to me is taking claim to our own bodies, to our own minds, and carving out again what healing looks like. And healing might look different on me than how it's going to look on the next person. But I get to decide what that looks like, not anybody else, right? And just being seen as a full human, that's a start. See me and know that I need help and I need resources too.
I think that's where these conversations are important, because more often than not, we can be labeled as minorities, and then that has like an implication of here's the people and then here's you, right? It's like a subcategory, and the needs are for this group, and then we can adapt them. We can do something. I'm curious about, your role throughout these videos. You've connected with a lot of people talking about burnout and self-care and wellness in the workplace. What's your experience been to get somebody to understand that there can be a beautiful aspect of life, and just because you're going through something like that, that doesn't mean it's going to be forever?
One of the things that most women, especially Black women, there's that stereotype of being you're such a strong Black woman. Many people have heard that. And a lot of people are learning that actually is not a compliment. And so many Black women have taken that on because they say, I'm strong. Because, we have to be strong. But you don't hear that of white women. You never hear another, girl, you're so strong. They don't have to be there. And so we're learning that it's okay not to be strong. That's too much to carry. That's a heavy weight. And so when I am in a training, for example, with emotional CPR, and there are Black women in the room, or Black men in the room, or men of color in the room, Black and brown, and I start to see the tears roll, I smile because I see that they are strong in letting go. I see the courage of giving themselves permission not to keep it locked in and to have it to fester. It's to say, I release this. This does not have to be my story. And let the healing begin. And it's so beautiful. And it's something that it's spiritual, because you just can't put words into it when you see it. But one of the things, again, I've learned, it's okay not to be okay. And you don't have to be a strong Black or brown woman.
Thank you so much, and that was beautifully said. You touched on a lot about healing and empowered communities, as people together. How can we better practice allyship? How can we better show up for people?
This platform is a start because we're talking, we're sharing, and, I always tell people, you don't have to conquer the world. Just start with one small little thing. And what that might be is something that you take away from this episode. Do you have a friend that's a person of color? Check on them. We're not always okay. And I think a lot of people learned that during George Floyd, that we were not all okay. And it was a big, huge conversation going on all over the world in respect to that. Know that resources depending on which group you fall in, especially if you are the privileged group, I may not have access to. It is really understanding that, and I think about racism being systemic, it's also very much into the mental health world. It's in all facets of our communities and in our systems. How can we dismantle that so all people can be seen and all people can be supported and all of them can be helped? So I really just think it just takes us to understand that we're all human. And I circle right back to that. If you never saw me, if you never had any idea of my gender, how would you treat me?
Wow, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think that the three of us can definitely connect with similar things that have a lot to do with generational trauma. So I know we'll be talking about that when we discuss some of the aspects with the Latino community. But as you mentioned with the events that unfolded with George Floyd, it's when something happens on an international scale, because we all have access to everything nowadays. And it's the difference between, are you able to sleep at night knowing that's happening? Or on the other side, do you even understand why that affects somebody? And I think that's like a tough pill to swallow. And you sometimes swim in the privilege of, you don't have to be, this is not a concern to you, right? You don't have to look at this. Life will go on. But for your neighbor, maybe their life has completely changed because of that, but you don't understand why. And that's why I'm very thankful for everything that you've shared, not just here, but in the previous ones, and really looking forward to the rest of this adventure.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And, I think it's just important for us all just to do check-ins, always check, how am I today? How is my friends doing? How's my family doing? Right? Because we really truly have support out there if we share, if we open up and start talking about it. And there's some things that are stigmas, but we can move through those. So many people have already done the work. My mother did the work. So I am reminded when I get stuck to remember her courage of moving through it, that I can do this. And that's why I do what I do today.
Thank you both. It's such, not just an honor, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of learning for me to be working with the two of you. And also, our NEC Chief Operating Officers behind the scenes, Tanya Ryder, who, she talks about, she's a conductor and putting all the musicians together. It was really exciting having her put us together. And I want to uplift that. And she is a Latina woman who recognizes, building, supporting platforms for folks of color, and not just that, but really having these conversations and centering equity and diversity in the work that we do. So thank you all.
I think it's so important for us to be aware of our workspaces. I know I have a history of good experiences and very toxic experiences. And it is for us to take charge of that and know that all spaces are not good spaces, even if they're paying you with a paycheck. Because on the other end, you might be paying for it later. And I think that's really a lesson I've learned. But many of us have been told, and I know I have too growing up, you don't want to lose that good job. Don't lose that good job. That's a good job. You should be grateful. And every day, many of us are losing ourselves. Every day, right now while we're doing this recording, we have people that are being hurt at these good jobs and not being seen fully. And so I know some of us feel like we don't have options, but if it's you that we're talking to today, think about the options that you have in taking care of self. What does self-care look like? And I think that too is so important when you're just trying to do the everyday thing, whatever that is for you. If it's in your household, if it's work, whatever space that you go, what does self-care look like just for you?
I appreciate that you touched on our topic, Kim. In our last newsletter, we had an article on psychological safety and also emotional CPR in the workplace, that you were a trainer, and you trained, I forget the state, was it?
In North Carolina or Portland?
I think it was, yeah, North Carolina. And I want to add on to that, if I may, just the call to action to spaces, because part of building healthy, healing, and empowered communities, like you said, is the workplace. So I want to call to action to employers, leaders to, look within and see in your space, where can you build in and practice equitable practices, and just being mindful of how you impact staff, and just really building that space for people, because we don't stop being human beings just because we clock in. We are still fully human, entering different spaces. We might put on different hats, but we show up, and I think that's a good way for leaders to show up for their people.
There can be a workspace that has representation from these three communities and 10, 15 more. So if you don't understand that maybe you're a supervisor and you don't understand why somebody may be having a panic attack or an emotional struggle, that's an open invitation for maybe I need to learn more about my people that I coexist with on a daily basis.
Or how someone of the privileged group will get that support of coming in late or having a panic attack. Oh, are you okay? Did you hear what happened to Susie? Oh my. But when it's somebody of color, they're like, they seem to always be running late. I don't understand what's going on. Why do they run off out of the meeting like that in tears? That was disrespectful and being insubordinate. I've seen it happen. So even in those circles, even privilege still shows up, even in that way. That person can be seen for what's happening versus the other. So your bias can show up. It's to be able to say, you know what? I want to acknowledge that, and I want to see that, because what you can be doing is creating more trauma. And good leadership means that, you know what? I don't want anyone to be harmed. And definitely not by my bias.
Kim, are you having emotional CPR in the workplace available for folks to tap into if they're curious about that?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, we're doing trainings right now through the National Empowerment Center. If many of you get the opportunity and you want to reach out to the National Empowerment Center, please go to our website, and you can actually put in our, you'll see comments, and you can actually send us an email that you're interested, or you can go to Emotional CPR, which is also on our website, and request that you would like to have emotional CPR that is customized for the workplace. And it's a powerful training, and we will customize it to meet your needs. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. It really was a wonderful conversation, and I just want to thank my two friends, Joanna and Juan. This particular episode touched my heart for a few reasons. One, it reminded me about who my shero is. Two, it's reminded me of the work that I've personally been doing. And three, it's reminded me of the work that my community has been doing. And I'm proud of all of it. And guess what? We still have more work to do. And we're going to get there. We just have to support each other and, most importantly, support ourselves. So thank you. And until next time.